Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome. Today's topic is Helen Zuck Lacey, 1897 to 1990. This originally was published as Zuck Family Memories Collection Number 7, or ZFMC 7, on April 17th, 1988. And Helen wrote this, I think, not too long before this time. She was another granddaughter of Tom Zuck, Civil War veteran, and she was the sister of Gertrude Zuck Ray, my grandmother. Marion, Ohio, September 30, 1890, Windsor Street. To go back almost 100 years to the Windsor Street home of my mother and father, and the 10 children which followed, is my hope and the wish of some of my nieces and nephews. It is quite a big order, but I will attempt to stretch my imagination. My father married Barbara Magdalene Hecker, the second daughter of Jacob Hecker, a doctor, in 1890. My father was a newcomer to Marion after 16 years in the Soldiers and Sailors Orphanage in Xenia, Ohio. Marion was the home of his birth and of his parents. Grandpa Hecker was the doctor of internal medicine, and Grandma the midwife who assisted him. He was a gentle, kind man and of fine character. Grandma attended the birth of each of our family, and Grandpa was the doctor who took care of the babies that followed in due order. Grandpa gave each of his many children a lot adjoining their fine, big old house on Windsor Street, making a sort of Hecker commune. Ours was the second from the big home, which still looks very much as it did when my father had it built before he was married in 1890. All of our uncles and aunts lived around us. The Heckers had a big barn and always a house. These played an important part in our childhood. Among the more vivid memories was the butchering of a pig each year, the huge iron pot of boiling water, and the drama that ensued. Fireworks always took place in their front lawn, to which old and young always assembled. One night the entire basket of fireworks ignited, and the entire display took off at one time, delighting the many children gathered in Uncle Ferd's yard. Another night their home caught on fire, and the entire clan came to watch the excitement. Everything always brought out the clan, and it became quite a clan. German was spoken by the Heckers in the early years, but school changed all of that. The babies followed the marriage in order. By the time I was born, the fourth, my parents were only 27 years old. One sister, Dora, had died of whooping cough. From the start, it must have been a busy family life of babies and work to care for them. Papa's only sister, Aunt Nettie, who worked in Cleveland, was a regular guest and always a big event. My very earliest memory is of a little silver heart necklace she brought me from Mexico. I couldn't have been more than 2 years old. By the time I was born, Papa had experienced a born-again conversion, and religion became an important influence in our growing up. I remember morning worship in our kitchen, to which we all came down to breakfast. Papa read the Bible, and we all knelt at our chairs while he read a long prayer to start the day. That is where I learned the Bible, much of which remains with me to this day. Father took us to Sunday school and church every Sunday, sometimes on a sled. I can still recall Gertrude and I, very small, singing a song on the pulpit of the Methodist church. We sat beside Papa during church, I always holding on to his hand throughout the sermon. Mama never got to go to church. She was too busy taking care of the new baby and her ever-growing family. Christian training was much a part of our growing up. The home our father built when he married Mama remained the home and birthplace of the entire family. It was enlarged to include plumbing and a bathroom and a back patio and porch when I was about 12 years old. We all, our parents, Mary, John, I, Gertrude, Fred and Ted, Lenore and Rachel, spent the summer in a big tent in the backyard. I can still see it. beds lining one side, the stove, table, and chairs the other side. We thought it a lark and watched the home grow into its present state. A new kitchen with a picture window, a new open stairway, a bathtub, even a toilet downstairs. We thought it marvelous. Most of our growing up, high school, dating, and college experience took place in this home. Our parents had great pride in their children. Education and college were the great expectation, even though Mother only went through the 4th grade and Papa through high school. So Gertrude and I were given music lessons while very young, even though there was little money. There was much talent among us. Gertrude and Rachel had fine voices. Ted and Fred taught themselves banjo and became the best. They both earned their way through college and graduate school by playing the banjo in the big jazz orchestras in Cleveland. Ted also studied cello, Gertrude violin, and I piano. Later, Rachel studied voice. Many mornings we were downstairs practicing in different rooms at the same time. Music was our way of life. It was a high expectation in our lives. We never had to be told to practice. Papa had a fine voice and yodeled and whistled a great deal in our young days. Mama always sang in the kitchen while she worked. Papa's father, my grandfather Zuck, was a fine, talented religious man. He was quite an artist. He spent 5 years in the Civil War. He kept daily diaries all through the war. From these we have learned a great deal about him and his personality. He became the map drawer for the armies and scouted ahead to be able to do this. His love of art, religion, and beauty, and his letters to his darling Anna are much a part of all that we know of him. He died when Papa was 8 months old. There were 3 living children in his family, Papa's, his sister Nettie, his brother Ed, and Papa. After his death, the 2 boys were put in the Xenia orphanage where they remained until they were 16. Aunt Nettie was brought up by a friend. Grandmother Zuck, Anna Filler, came from a well-to-do family, graduated from Wittenberg College in music, and was not able to cope with the death of Grandpa at 33 and the hard times that followed the Civil War. All of this influenced the lives of her 3 children, all of whom were fine-looking, gifted people. Ed, the brother, died at 19 of typhoid fever. Papa married Mama, and Aunt Nettie worked in Cleveland and came into our lives often as children. So the Civil War influenced greatly their lives as well as all of us who followed. Who knows what it might have been had it not been for the war. Papa was a fine Bible student, had learned all that at the orphanage. He taught an adult Sunday school for 50 years. The Zuck background before him was a religious one. His diaries show that. Our home had many restrictions. We were not allowed to play cards, drink alcohol, nor even go to the theater, all of which were forbidden by the Methodist Church. As we grew older, these mellowed and we were permitted to enjoy the theater and dancing, though never cards and alcohol. Mama was very busy taking care of her ever-growing family, which she did admirably. She was a great administrator with great order and obedience. We all had our special jobs in the home. Mine was cleaning the downstairs, Gertrude's the upstairs, the boys the dishes, etc. These changed with the years. Mama did the cooking, washing, and sewing. She was an excellent seamstress and made most of our clothes, even the suits for the boys. Our graduation dresses were beautiful, really works of art. By the time Lenore came along, she learned to sew and the picture changed. Going to college was expected, even though we had no money. Mary went to Ohio Wesleyan, Gertrude and I to Oberlin, Lenore to Athens, Fred and Ted to Western Reserve, and Tom to Wittenberg. Fred and Ted were able to graduate and go on to law school and medicine, getting their degrees. They were able to make a great deal of money playing banjo in the very popular jazz bands at that time. Gertrude and I weren't so lucky earning money, so we didn't graduate at Oberlin, but came home and taught school and went to normal school at Kent University in the summer. 2 summers we went to work in Yellowstone Park. We went as entertainers with our own trio. We worked as maids in the mornings and entertained the visitors to the park in the evenings. That is where Gertrude and Doran began their Western romance and ended in marriage. You know the rest of the story. I wasn't so lucky but came home to help run a very busy home. Lenore and Rachel were in high school and Fred and Ted in college. Tom was very young, having been born when I was 20. Those were hard years. Mama's health finally gave out and she didn't recover for several years. Mama's ill health made a great difference in the running of the family. During this time, Gertrude and Doran were married in a very pretty wedding in the German Methodist Church. I was her maid of honor and Ted their best man. We enjoyed their wedding breakfast in their new home on Windsor Street, just 2 doors from our home. Mary had married Frank Freilich some years before and lived up in the country, where Barbara was born the same year Tom was born. For a time before this, John, Gertrude, and I all worked, lived at home, and paid board and room. Lenore and Rachel were in high school and both had love affairs going on. Tom arrived during this time and was a child, growing up in this confused household. No wonder Mama's health gave out. Papa lost his job at the Marion Shovel Company, where he had been for many years. Later he found work at the Marion Star, at which he was very good at selling the Harding paper. He kept this work until he retired. These were frail years for Mother. We didn't think she would recover for a time. I was the oldest one at home, and the responsibility was taken by me, teaching in the day and taking care of Mother at night. I spent many evenings reading to her, cooking tempting dishes to help her return to health again. We had to hire a housekeeper for a time, as the home was still very alive with children growing up, and all the confusion of dating, college, and weddings. It may have been a happy time for some, but not for me. There were still six of us at home. Mary and Gertrude were the only ones married. Oh yes, John and Nell, somewhere along those years, were also married. Mama slowly recovered. She was only in her 50s. She lived almost another 50 years before her death at age 99, almost 100 years. During those years of Mama's illness, I finally met John Lacey and was married after living at home 10 years after I had finished high school. Dale and Lenore were married soon after I, and Rachel soon after that. Fred and Helen were married about the same time, and Ted and Georgia the following year. Many romances, marriages, and in-laws filled the home during those years. Tom was born and grew as a young child during those overflowing years. Mother was not completely well until after we were all married and gone, excepting Tom, so his experiences were quite different from the rest of us. Of course, there were many major happenings during all of these years which left an imprint on each of us. Gertrude was born with a large facial birthmark. Dr. Lewis, our family doctor, removed it successfully on a table set up in our living room. She was only a few years old, and I only 17 months older. I can recall the living room operating table and seeing Gertrude wearing a thick white hood covering her cheek for a long time. It healed beautifully and left very little scar. Ted suffered a severe burn to one of his legs while cleaning brushes in the woodshed. He lay on a cot in the parlor for 3 months while it healed. He was only 9 years old, but left with a great scar on his entire leg above the knee. Lenore, as a little girl, had typhoid fever, and the parlor was again turned into a hospital room, so someone could be with her all of the time. Also, so she could watch the family at the table eating, though she was not permitted to eat anything. How cruel it seems now. How medicine has advanced, and I hope we all in our understanding since those days long ago. We put a dish of peanuts by her bed. Of course, she promised not to eat them. In the morning, they were all gone, and she got well. I remember having dates out on the front porch and keeping watch of the ill child in the parlor. Nothing disrupted the flow of the home until Mother's illness. Nothing seemed ever the same again. However, Mother and Dad had many years to enjoy their home and the married lives of their children. Tom was especially good to them throughout those years. He built the beautiful stone fireplace in the far corner of the backyard. Also, the beautiful pool filled with water lilies with a flower-filled rock garden surrounding it and tall poplars lining the driveway, even goldfish in the pool. They enjoyed all of this for many years. After Tom's marriage, they took several trips to the West Coast to visit him. They also traveled to Canada with my family, as well as trips to the East Coast with Lenore and Dale. Perhaps other trips I have forgotten. A few words permeate the whole span of time. Devotion to each other, never-ending selflessness, never thinking of themselves first, religion, a part of everyday living, love, the greatest of all, with faith and hope to sustain them. If I have missed words or spelling or lines on the paper, it is because I can't see well. I have had 2 laser treatments now, and am seeing better, so be patient. Helen, Zuck, Lacey. Now we have some comments here. The first is from John S. Ray, my father, quote, "Reading Helen Lacey's recollections of growing up in Marion brings back many fond memories to me. I remember well the beautiful fireplace and fish pond which Tom Zuck built in his parents' backyard. We had many large, wonderful family parties in that backyard. I remember my mother telling me about the surgical removal of the scar from her face in the Zuck home in Marion. I remember Grandma Zuck being sick for a long time and finally getting better and living many, many productive, wonderful years." John S. Ray, Cleveland, Ohio. The next comment is from Helen Zuck Lacey, quote, "Looking forward to the next ZFMC copy eagerly, Helen Zuck Lacey." And the next is from Harold Freilich, quote, "I certainly am enjoying the Zuck family memories. I would like to purchase from you selections 1, 2, and 3. Please send me copies of these 3 and tell me how much I owe you. Would you like me to contribute any material for these?" Harold Freilich, Portland, Maine. Okay, the next comment is from Dale and Lenore Hughes, quote, "We treasure the ZFMC, Dale and Lenore Hughes, Marion, Ohio." The next is from Alice Garcia Ray, quote, "This is to express my admiration to Ms. Helen Zuck Lacey for writing and sharing with us her beautiful recollections. I was deeply touched, most especially on this part, quote, 'No wonder Mama's health gave out. Papa lost his job at the Marion Shovel Company, where he had been for many years. Later, he found work at the Marion Star, at which he was very good at selling the Harding paper. He kept this work until he retired. These were frail years for Mother. We didn't think she would recover for a time. I was the oldest one at home, and the responsibility was taken by me, teaching in the day and taking care of Mother at night. I spent many evenings reading to her, cooking to help her return to health again. A perfect example of a beautiful daughter. I look forward to reading more diaries of this kind. Alicia G. Garcia, Ni Ray, Restless Tutorial Center, Quezon City, Philippines." And the last comment is from Augusta Smallshaw. "Helen is a great gal and such a good daughter to her mother when she was sick so long. Such a good photo of her when she was 27. Good for you, Helen." Augusta Smallshaw, Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. So that concludes today's video about Helen Zuck Lacey, the sister of my grandmother. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.